Hi, I'm Daniel from Reforest, and I'm here today to talk about how you can engage your customers by going climate positive. Before I get started, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Bundjalung country in northern New South Wales, and I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So before I get started talking about how you can engage customers, I just want to touch on the problem because whilst I'm sure we're all on the same page, it's important to highlight that the planetary boundaries that we're crossing at the moment are really especially relevant to the local far north Queensland economy and in particular to tourism. Climate is front of all our minds, but biodiversity loss and pollution are actually even more immediate problems. But luckily, the right solutions can tackle all of these at once, and that's what we're going to discuss today. The context here is that consumers, customers, tourists, all of us as Australians want to feel like our purchases are part of the solution. 75% of us are concerned about climate change, and we're conscious that there's a footprint and impact when we buy things, when we have experiences. 65% of us are actually willing to pay something to do something about that. And 73% of us say we'd change our purchasing, but change where we travel to, which products and services we buy, in order to have a more meaningful environmental impact. And in travel, this is even more prominent. 82% of people want to be traveling more sustainably. 83% think that sustainable travel is vital. So you can see that particularly for an economy like Cairns, this is no longer something that's a nice to have. As COVID opens up and we start traveling again, addressing these issues head on with tourists, with customers is essential. And there's a broader wave of activity that this is all part of. There's the International Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency initiative, of which there's hundreds of travel organisations signed up. Many of them are from Australia, and they do include smaller companies as well as some of the bigger names. And the pace of this activity is really just picking up. So businesses are starting to see that getting on the front foot here is important, not just for the future of the planet, not just for themselves to be doing the right thing, but really also for engaging and attracting these climate conscious tourists and travellers. And there's a whole bunch of initiatives that are happening at a local level as well in far north Queensland. This is just a small smattering of the much larger palette of programs and initiatives that are underway from grassroots up to more larger organised initiatives. But at a Cairns Regional Council level, there's the Smart Green Economy, and that's bringing together lots of different ideas to help green the local economy in the Cairns region. The Wet Tropics Plan is another initiative that's focused a bit more on land, water and biodiversity. And Circular Economy FNQ is another pretty exciting new initiative that's happening, and there's a campaign around that starting soon, which is a great on-ramp, a simple way for businesses in the Cairns, North Queensland community to start getting involved in doing something that's tangible as part of a campaign to make a bit of noise, get some visibility and collect some data about the best ways to do this in order to have an impact and also be engaging customers. The challenge that they're running, this is Circular Economy FNQ, is called the Annual Circular Citizen Challenge. And it's focused on two key things initially, one being waste and waste management. It comes with a whole bunch of tips around that. And the second being removing carbon emissions and engaging customers with local ecosystem restoration. And that's the part that we're driving as Reforest. So whilst this is an introduction to Reforest in a general sense and how you can engage customers by restoring the planet, it's also an introduction and an explanation about how you can get started with this as part of this Circular Economy FNQ campaign. So how can your business get on the path to net zero? And that involves standing out as a leader, but also increasingly just not getting left behind, as this is really starting to pick up pace and it's something to be very proactive about. But secondly, how can you engage and attract those customers? That's really important as well, because it's work and it's effort to start doing the right thing. The customer engagement is the reward. So if we're doing it, we want to also be showing it. We want to be empowering customers to see it, value it, but also to take action themselves. And those ripples of influence are an important part of your power as a business to be driving change. So we'll touch on that soon. I'll touch on that now. And in terms of taking action, the first thing we need to do, there's 3 key steps. We add a 4th because we think it's really important. But the first key step is measuring. So getting an understanding of what an emissions profile looks like. What is the impact of a transaction that you as a business have with your customers? Then doing whatever we can to reduce that, removing what's left in terms of the emissions, and we need to go beyond zero ultimately. As an economy, we need to start restoring the planet. So removing excess carbon from the atmosphere is really important. And then again, engaging. How do we engage around that? So I'll touch on each of these steps really briefly. This is just a high-level introduction, but you can see our email address here. We'd love to hear from you if any of this is something you would like some support with. And we've got lots of free resources and references, as well as being able to help out in a bit more concentrated way ourselves. So measuring your footprint. The first point I'd like to make is it does not have to be perfect from the start. You just need to get started. There can be a lot that goes into getting a very detailed, accurate view of what we call your greenhouse gas inventory, your footprint as a business. It looks at fuel use across all levels in your business. It looks at your energy use, where you're getting that energy from, and it looks at the types of purchases that you make and the waste that you produce. So it covers a lot of different areas, and it's great to be starting to collect and get a good sense of how your business looks across these different elements. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is about making a start and taking action in steps. There's a whole bunch of resources available to help you with this as well. If you reach out by email there, we can connect you with a range of different types of do-it-yourself type calculators. We can help with a high-level estimate ourselves. We can also connect you through to solutions that are cost-effective and really low-effort ways of getting this data. For example, Evaluate Sustainability is a partner of ours. They've got a platform that connects to your Zero data and can pretty much instantly give you a view of your footprint as a company and track that over time, as well as some advice and tips about reducing it. If you're a really big organisation or a city council, something like that, then you may well need consultants. And again, it's not something we do, but we can put you in touch with the right sorts of people. So give us a shout if there's something we can do to help you there. But these are kind of some of the issues to be thinking about. Once you know what your baseline is, once you know what the footprint of a transaction in your business looks like, then we can start looking for ways to reduce it. And again, it doesn't have to happen all at once. This is just about creating a plan, a journey that you're going to be on as a business. I won't go into too much detail about what this can look like, because it's different for every single business, and it depends on the nature of your business and sort of energy suppliers you have and where and how you use energy and waste, etc. But some of the big ticket items and the higher value things to look at are where you get your energy and electricity. Obviously, electrifying everything that we can is a huge part of the change we need to drive across society. More efficient equipment where possible, and reducing waste. These are all the key ones really, but how that specifically relates to your context does require a kind of more case-by-case look. And when you do your emissions audit, when you get some of that data about where your emissions are coming from, you'll see where that needs to be and where those opportunities are. Thirdly, removing emissions. So as a business, even if you're reducing everything you can, you are still going to be generating carbon emissions, and every one of those customer transactions is still going to have a footprint, an impact of some kind. So this is about at least neutralizing, if not turning that overall impact of that transaction positive. And we do that through restoring nature. We call these nature-based climate solutions. That can involve reforestation, regenerative agriculture, which means storing carbon in soil, basically, and blue carbon. That's restoring our waterways, mangroves, seagrasses, that kind of environment. And the benefits here are, as I mentioned earlier, biodiversity being at least as much, if not more, of an immediate crisis as climate. We can be solving those two problems at once. The right trees planted in the right place recreate habitats that were destroyed when that land was cleared however long ago. Storing carbon in the soil produces more regenerative farming practices, better quality food for us to eat, and blue carbon means that the filtration mechanisms, sediment runoff, those kind of issues which have knock-on effects to the reef, of course, are also being benefited, as well as carbon being removed. So that's why we look at nature-based solutions, and it can be just as simple as planting trees. Really, it's all about making sure, though, that the projects that we're supporting, whether they're your own projects, if you're a big enough organisation, you've got sites to do this, or local projects with expert partners, and that's what we provide. Those projects need to be additional, so they need to not have been happening anyway. So the carbon removal is extra carbon removal that wouldn't otherwise just have happened. They need to be permanent, so we need to know that the carbon that they're removing from the atmosphere is going to stay removed. And they need to be measurable and verifiable, so we know exactly how much carbon is actually being removed, and that's how we balance that carbon removal against the emissions that you as a business are still causing and that your customer transactions are therefore generating. And there's really good programs for doing this. You've probably heard of carbon offsets. They can come from many different sources in many different parts of the world. We have our own system here in Australia run by the federal government, and we use a unit called an Australian Carbon Credit Unit. One of those represents 1 tonne, 1,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide removed from the atmosphere. And with us, Reforest, we do that only in nature-based solutions, and we always try and make that local so that your local economic activity, your local emissions are being removed by restoring local ecosystems that are having all those other benefits for the local environment, and particularly for tourism on that environment that tourism depends on. So I'll just quickly touch on what Reforest is here, because essentially it's a way for you as a business to connect to those kinds of local projects, but not just connect to them and contribute to planting trees in them, but then also make that engaging for your customers. So we help businesses really deeply engage customers with this sustainability, this decarbonisation journey that you're on. And we do that by providing your customers with very tangible, personalised feeling impact that even rewards them. And essentially what we're trying to deliver to your customers, or help you to deliver to your customers, is a sense that the action you're taking to remove those emissions is so real that they can see and feel it. We want your customer to feel like they're responsible for that action by buying from you. So it's part and parcel with the product or the service that you're selling, and that customer now feels some ownership over it by virtue of being your customer. We want to make sure it feels fair, so you as a company are doing the right thing and taking care of the emissions that you generate and removing at least as much CO2 as is being generated, but also letting that customer contribute themselves so that together you can be removing twice as much carbon as was emitted by that transaction. Now we feel like we're restoring, and it's much more positive and engaging proposition. And lastly, rewarding. We want that customer to have to be able to see and experience the benefits of this activity and have other opportunities to participate with those projects and develop rewards that they can that represent that benefit as well. So the way that works is Reforest is a recognizable brand that you can present to your customers. So you can essentially say, hey, we're working with Reforest, here's what we're doing. You can do that in a digital context, so in a confirmation for a ticket purchase, you can do that physically on a poster in a hotel lobby or on a tour bus. It can be either a QR code or a link that goes anywhere. You don't need to take any payment from the customer around this, so it's literally just putting pretty visual and some messaging wherever is most appropriate to you and your business context that's letting your customer know, hey, we're planting trees for your transaction. Your customer then scans that QR, and what happens is you as a business are showing them that you're planting trees in local certified reforestation projects to remove all those carbon emissions. We don't call this offsetting. We're trying to be really specific about the trees, where they're being planted, and how much carbon's being removed, and the fact that these are real trees. So the customer can scan that QR, then in their own Reforest account, they get the app straight away. They can see the tree that you've planted. This is our virtual forest, which is a one-for-one representation of every real tree planted in the ground. We even try and show some of the biodiversity benefits of those projects with animated creatures that are added to this personal virtual forest as well. I can see that this tree was planted for me in this particular project by the company I purchased from. It's serialized. I see a picture of the real tree in the ground, and I can tap on the name of this project to go and see some of the details about it. That includes looking at some those videos. There's backstory about what this project is trying to achieve, both in a carbon removal and in a biodiversity context. It shows the location of the project. I can see all my trees from that particular project, and I can even go and virtually tour through the site, which gets updated over time to see how that site's changing and what's happening. So this is a way for that customer to feel really connected to the impact that you as a business are having, to feel some ownership over it, and to be accumulating all that goodness somewhere that they can see it, they can show it to their family and their friends. So really what we're trying to do here is localize and build a community of regenerative activity. And the Far North Queensland environment is just a perfect case study, a perfect showcase for this. So we've got local business activity generating local carbon emissions, wherever possible using local solutions to reduce those emissions. And then for all the remaining emissions, any excess that we're able to remove from the atmosphere as well, doing so by restoring local ecosystems, and then the people who are participating in this getting access to local benefits and rewards by being part of it. All of that is a really nice circular loop of value that's returning that positive sentiment and that customer experience in that local economy. So one of the things, for instance, that the projects we support, we always try and make sure offer a planting days. This is an example of one we did last year down in Victoria. People are a little more rugged up here, as you can see, than they would be in North Queensland. This was a great day though. People who've been planting trees through the app came along, got to plant them for real in the ground. We did this in partnership with 2040. And it's just one example of that participation opportunity that you as a business and your staff, as well as your customers, can have with these projects wherever possible. It can also include staying at eco cabins on the project site. It can include getting tours through the project with the owners. And in case there's a traditional owner-based project, there's a whole ecotourism and economic development opportunity there as well. The project in North Queensland that we have today is your local carbon removal project, is run by our partners Native Conifers Carbon Sink. Daryl Killen is the founder and director of Native Conifers, and Lou in the picture here is his colleague. They are planting a combination of native rainforest species as well as native conifers like the kauri and the bunya pine in a very unique system which has a huge amount of carbon removal and storage in those trees. The native conifers are slower growing but giant carbon storers, as well as all the biodiversity benefits of a native rainforest ecosystem that grows up from the gullies up under the native conifers over time. So it's a really unique system. It builds a lot of climate resilience, as well as having a lot of biodiversity benefit. They're doing this project sites up on the Atherton tableland, so it's local. It's helping to prevent runoff of sediment and erosion and prevent sediment runoff that happens, that goes down the rivers and out to the reef. So there's a whole bunch of local benefits, as well as the fact they're a local team doing local projects, employing local people. There's more information available on that through our app, but also on their website as well. And where we're really trying to go here is to create a showcase from the North Queensland, particularly Cairns, Port Douglas, the North Queensland region, and in tourism in a very strong way, but across the economy. We want to be able to show, we want to support lots of businesses to get on board with these programs, to be able to show that tourists coming, considering where they might travel, coming to Cairns is a regenerative tourism experience, that there's enough local businesses on board removing emissions in local projects that as a region we can start removing more carbon than we're emitting. And I don't think that exists anywhere else. There's a window of opportunity here to showcase Cairns as a restorative, truly restorative tourism destination. And I think this campaign with Irene Pollack's Circular Citizen Challenge is just a great opportunity to give this a kickstart, start collecting some data and showing how this can really be coming to life. So if you're interested to get involved, getting started with Reforest is a very simple process. Just send us an email for now to get us to, and we can help you get started. We'll direct you to the most appropriate way to get a simple footprint assessment. And again, it is just a starting point, doesn't have to be the most perfect thing right now. So we just tailor that to your particular situation and needs. Then we'll have a chat about where and how it makes the most sense to be engaging your customers. You buy your first trees, and we obviously recommend the local project for that. And we give you a QR code and you can start engaging your customers. All of that interaction is tracked and reported back to you so you can see how well it's going. We're always looking for your feedback, and we'll combine it all up with this larger picture of both the Circular Citizen Challenge and how much activity collectively we're able to drive as part of that, but also in a longer term sense, how that looks at a regional level and in line with that goal. Can we, as a region, through restorative tourism, remove more carbon than we emit, and showcase Cairns in this light? That's my introduction to Reforest. Please reach out by email, info@reforest.com.au with any other questions, and thanks very much.